Someone in our community asked me to speak about addictions and the source of addictions. So let's go ahead and talk about addictions. What are addictions? Well, you can say, simply put, addictions are something that we are adding to ourself. Addiction. It's something that you add to yourself. Now, why are you adding that to yourself? It's, again, because of the belief in separation. When there's the belief in separation, when there's a belief in being a separate self as its own entity that is apart from everything else, it then feels limited and it feels lack. That is the hallmark feeling for one that believes to be a separate entity that exists apart from the whole. The belief in separation creates this feeling of lack. And when there's the feeling of lack, there's the tendency to add something to yourself in order to seek fulfillment. When there's the belief in being a separate self, there's always going to be the striving for completion, adding something in efforts to complete myself. And this is really addictions in a nutshell when you look at it. That you're adding something to yourself because deep down you feel you lack something. The addiction is always an effort to fulfill yourself, to complete yourself. And if you're honest with yourself, you notice that after the addiction cycle is complete, you feel unfulfilled. You don't feel complete. You feel incomplete again, and you feel you lack. And this then continues the cycle. There may be a temporary relief in that sense of lack or the sense of incompleteness. And that's when we want to repeat that cycle again and again. And with every addiction, it always feels like you need more and more of it. We're chasing that feeling of completeness and wholeness, fulfillment. You could also look at addictions from a different perspective than that which I just described. And that would be looking at it as a way to end suffering, or in other words, find happiness. That when we look at our addictions, we're either running to our addictions in efforts to escape the suffering. So the addiction becomes a coping mechanism, you could say, or an escape mechanism, that we're escaping reality and we're trying to run to it to alleviate our suffering, to try and numb the pain. Or you can look at it that we're unhappy and we're running to the addiction because we believe that to be the source of happiness. And this is really what suffering is it's seeking happiness in the wrong places. That there's this belief that perhaps the drugs and alcohol will make me happy. And there might be some temporary experience of happiness when the seeking energy temporarily comes down, or that the desire is no more, then there's the experience of happiness. But then when there's the rise of the desire and that seeking starts up again, then that's what creates the cycle, continues the cycle. So when we look at these addictions, we can see, are they checking off these boxes that I'm listing? Are we running to the addiction because we feel like we want to fulfill ourselves, that we need it to complete ourselves? That when we feel this emptiness or this lack, which is often hard to pinpoint at the time, it might just feel like there's some sort of discomfort, this uneasiness. It might even feel like boredom. That then you just want to run to your addiction, pick up your addiction. Does it feel like you've created that addiction as the source of your happiness, that then you are dependent on whatever the addiction is to then make you happy, thus creating a codependency on something that appears to be external from you? That whatever the addiction is, it feels almost like a crutch, like you need it. You're dependent on it. You're relying on it. You're attached to it. Which then it's very hard to break those cycles, especially with the belief that that is your happiness, that that substance or that activity or that which you are adding to you makes you happy. Now the question may arise, well, how do I overcome this addiction? And it starts with a video like this. Because perhaps you have been suffering this addiction for far too long now. And it's breaking you down. And that's exactly what I'm speaking about. Is that the suffering is a sign. And you can't continue ignoring it. That the sign is saying that your happiness is not in the substance, that your happiness is not in this activity. The suffering is saying what you're looking for is not here. Stop looking for it outside of yourself. Because the truth is that everything that you're looking for is within you. And overcoming this addiction starts with seeing things clearly. Seeing exactly what I'm describing. That yes, this addiction is something that I'm adding to myself. Yes, this addiction is something that I'm trying to fulfill myself with. Yes, this addiction comes with this belief that I need this in order to feel more complete or more whole or more fulfilled. Or yes, I do believe that this addiction is making me happier. Or yes, I do believe that this addiction is easing my pain, easing my suffering. But like I said, if you look at it, it's very cyclical. It will feel like a ritual that then you have to repeat. And that which you are trying to fulfill yourself with, you need more of it. That which you are trying to use to become happy, you need more of it. And if you're honest with yourself, you see that this cycle is detrimental to your health and well-being. That there gets a point where the negative effects of the substances or the activities, the addictions, just become too detrimental. That you can't ignore the signs anymore. And that sign is suffering. That sign is suffering. And for a lot of people, this is really the start of a spiritual awakening. Because you're going outward, looking for that which can only be found inward. That you're really seeking yourself in objects, in appearances, in activities. What you're looking for is not temporary happiness, temporary fulfillment, temporary peace, temporary freedom, temporary love. You're not looking for temporary. You're looking for everlasting. And that's why the cycle continues to go on and on. Is because if you actually found what you were looking for in the addiction, in the substance, in the activity, then you would be satisfied. But that's not the way it is. Is that when we are addicted to something, we're only temporarily satisfied. But then it's almost like we become even more unsatisfied. That then that addiction becomes stronger. We need more of the substance. We need to perform the activity more, which then creates more and more suffering. And it gets to the point where this suffering is then awakening us to what's really going on here. Is that there's suffering, that there's unhappiness. And what we're doing needs to change. And what is it that we're doing? Is that we're seeking everything that we want in this addiction. So the suffering is a sign that says, turn around and look within yourself. And sometimes it has to break us down so much to the point of feeling helpless and hopeless, like a complete failure, that we just can't continue to live this way. That's when that energy turns from going outward and then go inward, which then you're actually starting to experience the relief from the suffering. You start experiencing something entirely different, something that you've never experienced before, at least not in this addiction. You start experiencing the perfume of your true nature. You start experiencing happiness, love, peace, freedom, fulfillment, wholeness, completeness, rest, relaxation, you start experiencing this perfume, and it starts drawing you in more and more. And depending on how severe the suffering was, depending on how much you were looking for what I just described, what I just listed, then you could either take your time going inward, or it feels like you just come running back home, running back to yourself. It will feel like you've almost lost yourself in this addiction. And that it takes you to totally break down and experiencing severe suffering for you to come back home to yourself. And then you feel like you found yourself. And then it feels like you never want to leave home again. And you'll never want to leave yourself. You'll realize that everything that you've ever wanted is right here. It's within you. That you are it. And it's that realization that then gives you that power back, that you aren't giving power to the addiction. And the power is the belief. You're not believing that that addiction is what you need. By realizing that you are everything. You are it. You are the happiness, the love, the peace, the freedom. That this external object, that this substance or activity can't give you anything. You are no longer dependent on it. You then have the clarity to see that there's nothing that this addiction, that this activity, that this substance could ever give you. How could it give you anything when you realize that you are everything? And it's with that realization that then it's like the addiction drops effortlessly. Just realizing that what you are looking for this whole time is not in that substance, not in that object, not in that activity. But you only realize it by turning around and going within and realizing the source of everything that you're looking for. Realizing that you are that source. Like I said, it might not happen all in one shot. It might feel like you're turning away from the addiction and you're slowly going within. And the more you go within, the more you're experiencing that perfume of your true nature. The more you start experiencing that it's this way that I feel more complete. I feel more at peace. I feel more free. I feel more love. I feel more happiness. I feel more peace. I feel more rest, more relaxation. It's going this way. It becomes clear that this way is where I want to go. That way is suffering. This is what I want. That's what appeared to be what I wanted. But now, with the clarity, now with the experience, it's very easy to see. I don't want that. If I continue going that way, I continue suffering. And it's going this way that, like I said, it could be some a slow progress, but eventually you come to the realization, or it could be that you just run home and then you realize it. That in fact, you realize that you are whole, you are complete, you are fulfilled, you are already whole, complete, and fulfilled. That you don't need this substance to add to you. You don't need this activity to add to you. You realize that you are happiness. You don't need this addiction to make you happy. And it's with that realization that, like I said, the addiction just drops. It just drops. It's the fact that you had this belief in being a separate self. You had this belief in being separate, therefore limited and therefore lacking. It's this belief that made you misidentify yourself with something that you are not. It's really coming down to just the ignorance, not knowing what you really are, and realizing what you are. These addictions have no power. They're effortlessly dropped. Hopefully this helps. I'll see you in the next one.